All right, good evening. It is February 1st, 2021, first day of February. I'll tell you, time flies. We are on the tail end, last portion of this winter storm that's been affecting the area. We have the current radar picture up here. You can see a lot of banding has actually developed down into the Northern Virginia area. Let's go ahead and loop this here. All these bands kind of came through the Montgomery County area. All in all, an underperforming storm for a decent chunk of the area. As we thought might happen, the system kind of developed a little bit too late and we didn't get the banding that we were expecting. But up north toward the Mason-Dixon line, some big totals from the banding in the last 24 to 48 hours or so. Kind of an interesting storm in that it happened in multiple parts and it was kind of drawn out. Really extended period of winter precipitation, but for many areas it was very light and it was, slow to accumulate. So the snowfall production was a little bit inefficient in a lot of areas. We didn't really have the dendrites, which are the best type of snowfall that you can get to accumulate quickly. It didn't really pan out in a lot of areas. But from that radar loop here, you can see banding heading down into Virginia. This will probably rotate back through the area in some way, shape, or form. It probably won't be as intense. But black ice, definitely some slippery spots are going to be possible tonight. Snow showers really possible into tomorrow, just as the storm is stalled off the coast and then slowly pulls away. Wouldn't expect a whole lot additional accumulation in the immediate Washington area, even toward Baltimore, but up again toward the Mason-Dixon line and especially in southeast Pennsylvania and those areas, probably going to pile up a little bit more snow. But obviously, drive safely out there. Things are still a little bit hazardous and temperatures are cold. And with additional snowpack being deposited, we'll probably have some pretty chilly nights here, especially if radiational cooling can become a factor. But obviously, it's pretty cloudy out there, so radiational cooling probably is not going to set in for until tomorrow night. Breezy conditions also possible, but stay warm, stay safe. This storm's kind of going to wind down for the area. And actually, let's switch gears here. And I wanted to talk about what's next because I know I mentioned in the last video there was the possibility of some additional storm systems toward next weekend, and everyone's talking about the Arctic blast now. We're going to get a couple nice days toward the end of the week, maybe Thursday, Friday, but get yourselves ready. The Arctic blast is coming. So with that, let's head to our next portion here. All right, GFS model. This is the 18Z GFS. This is the one that ran this evening. 18Z being earlier in the afternoon, though. The models don't run, the start time of the models are not exactly when, they start in real time. So let's move this forward. This is forecast hour 144. So this is Sunday afternoon, February 7th. Notice, not warm, but mid 40s or so. But look at this line out here to the west of us being depicted Sunday early afternoon. That is marching eastward, and that's an Arctic front. So let's push forward a little bit here. You can see there we are. And then very early Monday morning, this is February 8th. Look at these temperatures. We had 2 degrees along the I-95 corridor, and look out toward Pittsburgh, -14, -13. Out into Ohio, -20. This is going to be a legitimate Arctic air mass, and it's going to be blasting through. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to be the first truly cold air mass that we've had all winter. That's going to set the stage for some potential wintry weather to follow that. It might come in one of a few different forms. Obviously, the usual caveats apply. It's very uncertain. 7 days out, 8 days out, 9 days out, 10 days out. Just like with this storm, even 48 hours before the storm, we really didn't know what was going to happen with it. And a lot of forecasts still ended up busting. A lot of people kind of overestimated the snowfall because of a few rogue model runs. But ultimately, we called what we just experienced, the storm that's ending now, is called a Miller B. This is generally how it turns out for the DC area. We generally get a little screwed on the snowfall. But what's coming up is a potential blockbuster winter storm pattern. Doesn't mean it's going to be a blockbuster winter storm, but we'll kind of walk through here what we can expect and what's going on. But the Arctic air, definitely there. I mean, you can see pushing forward the following day, single digits again, -12 in Pennsylvania. And then temperatures slowly moderate after that. But getting the cold air into place is going to be step one in really setting the stage for a potential winter pattern. And then you can see toward the end of the run, temperatures moderate. But by then, you're 15 days out. So who can say if that's really going to happen? I would say moderating temperatures after that would be a pretty good bet. But stay tuned on that front. Let's hop over to a little bit of a different model here. Let's go to the European model. This is where things get very interesting. Speaking of which, the website we were just on was Tropical Tidbits. It's a great website if you're into weather models. The website we're hopping over to now is Pivotal Weather. It's also a great website. This is the European model. This is right now, or well, earlier today. You can see our storm system off the coast here. This is our current storm. It's pulling out. It'll be ending, obviously. And let's push forward here. Now, we don't show temperatures on this map, but you can see weather quiets down, probably have some breezy conditions, high pressure, moves in. And then you can see as we get towards the weekend, this is Friday. Notice the low pressure, and let me turn annotate on here just so we can all see what's going on here. This system here is trailing a front. Now, I'm not using the proper colors here. That's an Arctic front. There's a lot of Arctic air coming in behind it. There's what we call some cross-polar flow. A lot of Arctic air is dumping in behind that system. Let me clear that. If I can remember how to use Zoom. All right, now let's push forward here. Arctic front goes through. Now on this model, I want to point out something. It gets very dry after that front goes through. It's very cold, but nothing really follows it up until this storm system starts forming down in Texas. Obviously, we jumped ahead there a little too much. Oh, I kind of spoiled it, but system there in Texas, you can see, and let's try not to, right there. And this system, what this system does is going to be highly dependent on the upper air pattern. The pattern does favor snowstorms, especially with that Arctic air moving in, but let's clear that and I will show you what this model says is going to happen. I can figure out what I'm doing here. Okay, there we go. And we'll push forward and you can notice it kind of goes south. Then it takes a sort of a similar progression to what the storm we just had, but the primary low over toward the west, like West Virginia, isn't very strong. And look where the secondary forms off the coast of the Carolinas, way farther south. Notice here it's already snowing into the DC area, heavy snow back into the mountains of Western North Carolina, West Virginia, etc. We push forward. That is a heck of a storm as depicted on the Euro right there. 982 millibars, a deepening storm system. It's tucked into the bay a little bit too much. So areas to the south and east and even into the metro corridor and even up toward like Frederick and this one would mix or change to rain potentially. But it's unusual for a storm to run that far inland. It can, but usually we see things cutting up into the Great Lakes or going off the coast. It's not impossible for it to do something like this, but I would say it'll obviously adjust over time, but look at that. I mean, that is a wound up storm, 970 millibars, very deep storm off of New York and New Jersey there. And then it pulls away. Now notice pushing forward here again, another storm right on its heels forming. This is Tuesday, February 9th, forming down near New Mexico. And look how it comes across the country there, Gulf Coast states, snow into the DC area once again. So we have a very active pattern that's going to be starting. And that's one model. That's the European. Two storms, we go backwards here, over the course of just a few days. So this is February 7th. And then the next one right on its heels, impacting the area on February 10th. So in a 3 or 4 day period, decent storm potential. Now, let's switch to the GFS model here and kind of go through the same progression. That's the storm system off the coast for right now. It's pulling out. We'll get that one out of the way. We'll advance forward in time here. We're now on February 3rd, February 4th. Interesting thing I want to point out about the GFS model here. Watch as this Arctic front goes through. It handles the Arctic front just a little bit differently than the European did. We go forward here. We get a little shower activity ahead of the Arctic front, probably get a little bit warmer. And as the Arctic front goes through, watch what happens. A secondary front kind of forms and sends what looks like a secondary Arctic front through the area. Now, many of you won't remember this, but back in February 2015, a similar Arctic front went through and dumped a quick 2 or 3 inches that kind of flash froze on the area roadways. It snarled traffic. It was not a good situation. And this is kind of a similar situation there. You can see, without trying to mess up the map here again, I'm going to draw this in for you. Arctic front would be somewhere right in there. And you can see the blue kind of right around it. Those are all snow squalls. European didn't have that. European on the model we just looked at did not have that system going through. So how that Arctic front handles is going to determine whether or not we get those snow showers and potential snow squalls with it. Regardless, let's kind of jump forward here. you notice that the GFS model, once that front goes through, also has that storm system kind of forming down in the south, but here's how it handles it differently. As the storm approaches the area, it kind of gets suppressed off the coast, and you see we do get some snow, but then it gets shunted off the coast and heads due east almost. Pretty low impact event. So that's a difference between the European and GFS. GFS is suppressed. European is very wound up. Neither model is going to have this right at this time frame, but it'll be something to watch. The fact of the matter is, the GFS model does show a storm. It's just not as wound up as the European. It would be one thing if one was showing no storm at all and the other was showing a wound up storm. Both have the storm system. They just treat it a little bit differently. Let's push forward on the GFS, and you notice that as we go forward, there's the other system, but again, it gets suppressed. Kind of gets closer to the coast there, but it's a rain event, kind of uncertain of what's going to happen there. And then the end of the run, way too far out to say anything with certainty, but it does look like another sort of Arctic front might be getting ready to come through at that point. Look at that high pressure, 1056 millibars. That's a heck of a high pressure. So let's move on here to the Canadian model. I realize we're kind of doing model overload here tonight. And we'll push forward. That again is the storm currently off the coast. It moves out. We'll kind of speed forward here. There's the Arctic front. And notice something here. The Canadian model here also has that Arctic front, the secondary Arctic front with snow squalls. So 2 out of 3 say snow squalls, and then the European says maybe not. But good bet that with an Arctic front, you're going to get some kind of precipitation, and it's going to be breezy behind that too. Lots of cold weather flowing in. Let's move forward here. Canadian, look at that storm system forming in the south. Big time storm system for the the Missouri area, Arkansas. Who knows whether that's going to happen or not, but push forward and look at that. Big time snowstorm. Shunts a little bit off to the south, but I mean, this is a textbook pattern as we move forward. So, and you can see kind of another system sort of hanging out there down along the coast, maybe a follow-up system. That's way too far out. This is 240 hours away, 10 days. So we'll continue to monitor, but before we kind of disconnect here, I'm going to show you the GFS model. GFS we already did, but one thing I want to annotate here is look at this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my marking here since it's also red, but this area up here, that is a heck of a North Atlantic oscillation block. What this is going to do is it's going to kind of suppress everything south. This is actually a little lobe of the polar vortex here. That's what's going to introduce all this cold air being dumped out of Canada and from the Arctic. That'll deliver that Arctic front. I think it's pretty safe to say that later in the week and weekend, Arctic front's going to be going through. That much is pretty high confidence. The timing will obviously vary, and then what happens after that is going to vary. But that is a really textbook pattern for East Coast snowstorms. Generally, this level of the atmosphere, we call it the 500 millibar or H5 level, tends to be a little bit easier to analyze or diagnose at long leads versus the surface maps. So where low pressure might be pegged as one area on a model, it's better to look at long ranges at the 500 millibar map. And I got to tell you, that is a really robust snow pattern. So while we might have failed on this particular storm that just went through, the next set looks like maybe a bigger threat. So stay tuned. We will diagnose those storms as they get closer. This will probably be the last video for a couple of days. Keep an eye on the blog. I'll be issuing written updates as well as needed. Probably take a day or two off here, but keep your eye on the sky. Things are going to get very interesting as we head toward next weekend. Hope you all are staying safe and have a great evening. Again, it's February 1st, 2021. This is Pulse Weather.